wooden products to shape such hot glass. But what he did there is really key to success. He just dribbled a little water onto the surface of that hand pad. And when we have water on our wooden tools, then when we introduce it to the intensely hot glass, instead of catching on fire and sticking, that wooden tool creates a barrier of steam on the surface. So steam really is a non-stick surface for us. So we can use newspaper and wood and all kinds of things without catching them on fire because of that nice little layer of steam that forms. Like grabbing hold of the glass. Now, so we use wood, we use metal, and our biggest tool is, of course, heat. Heat makes the glass soft and able to be shaped. So you'll see Michael here at the bench shaping and manipulating that glass, and then as soon as it starts to cool down, become too stiff, he'll go right back into our secondary furnace to rewarm and re-soften it. You can even see the color differences here as this bubble draws out really tall and thin. The top section's already starting to cool off. You can see that glow dissipate. He stares it down, but really what's happening is he's tapping on a pedal down below. That pedal is attached to that glow hose that he attached to the far end of the pipe. That whole system is using about 2 pounds of pressure to inflate glass while we tap on that pedal. And while he could just use traditional methods, really pay attention to how that bubble is expanding. The metal blades and the wooden paddle, and we'll get a nice sharp line for this bottom half. Now this paddle at this point is left a little dry. That's why we're seeing some flame happening. When the glass is fresh from the furnace and super hot, it's sticky. But when it gets thin like this, if we were to add a wet paddle to the surface of that thinner bubble, it runs the risk of breaking that glass. Our glass is very susceptible to something called thermal shock. Has anybody ever heard that term before, thermal shock? It's when materials are trying to expand and contract as they heat and they cool, and if they don't have the flexibility to do so, they tend to break and crack. Like ice harness to help us, because we need to break some glass right now. We need to remove this piece from the original blow pipe and trade it over onto the secondary iron called a puntee. But breaking glass can happen in sort of unpredictable ways. Has anybody here broken glass before? Almost everybody, right? So you're familiar with the way that glass tends to shatter. So as a glass maker, we want to thermally shock it without catastrophically breaking it. And we found the best way to do that is to create and exploit weaknesses in the material. So this puntee is attached a little colder, not truly bonded. Hopefully that weak connection can be removed easily at the end of the process. The top of the bubble has a tight constriction line, and now he just drops a little water right in that line and a light tap. That's all it takes to break it free. Beautiful job. Let's give the team a round of applause. Material. And glass can be colored, but it's not necessarily dyed. So what we do is we add metal oxides into the raw materials of glass to create those various colors. Now that gives us a good chance to talk a little bit about glass itself, though. Can anybody tell me what glass is made out of?
Sand.
Ooh, sand and soda, very good. That's 2 of the 3 components for our particular glass, but pretty much all glasses are made of sand. But it's what the flux is. Flux is lower melting temperatures. So we can get our glass to melt around 2,000 degrees as opposed to 4,000 degrees is what that sand would have had to melt. And then we add limestone as a stabilizer. So if we want to color, then cobalt for dark blue, copper for light blue, manganese for purple, iron for green, pink comes from gold chloride. And we get all of those colors all homogeneous, all mixed in, all the raw materials in a big tank of glass, and then they scoop that out, drop it into water, break it into little pieces, and sell it to us like this. So this is how we typically use our colored product, these little frit pieces. And we can just melt them right into the surface of our clear, but they have to be melted when the glass is really melty. So it's usually at that first gather. We'll roll our little blob through those little chips. They stick and melt in and create a veneer of color on the surface of our bubble rather than dyeing the entire amount. We're using our purple glass today. That is a pure tank of purple glass. So that's solid. We don't need a veneer. We just gather it right out. Great question. I think I saw a couple other hands that popped up. Are there other questions? I guess they might have answered it. Yes? Special glasses? So, my glasses are just so I can see, but in general, we wear just standard safety glasses is fine. Because safety glasses just keep glass from flying and popping and cracking at any point. Now, if we were flame workers, we would use didymiums. Didymiums would cut out the sodium flare, giving us a better view of that process. And I suggest you go up to our flame working booth today, see one of our flame working demonstrations, and they've got a little screen that you can look through or look aside, and it'll show you the difference between looking through the didymiums and not looking through didymiums and what that flame looks like up there. All right, so we've got our beautiful vessel. Now we're on to the sexy handles. And these are really tricky. You made that first one look pretty easy, but they're going to work together as a team to make this happen. Jeff is going to pre-shape this glass, making sure it's just the same amount, just the same temperature, same shape. More consistent he can be, the more consistent Michael can be. But ultimately, Michael is in charge of the piece. He's what we call the gaffer. So he can accept or deny every bit that's brought to him. He's kind of keeping a keen eye on Jeff, making sure he's bringing things at just the right size and shape. But he stretches it up, cuts it free, immediately flipping over, because this thing's like a wet noodle flopping around. But he kind of reads the wiggle to help him with his timing. Nice, right back onto itself. Because if that piece is wiggling a lot, you might give it a couple seconds to set up slightly. If it's not wiggling very much, he's got to work faster to get that handle reattached. Because once it hardens, it's really hard to spot heat and regain the temperature in just that handle and not get everything else too hot. So you'll notice the difference between the first one and the second one. The first one's already lost its glow. It's already set in place. There's no changing it at this point. So it's really building it bit by bit, piece by piece, handle by handle, making sure each one is finished and stable before you get to the next one. You might also notice that he's got a very unique pair of scissors that he's used. Stretching it up, grab the tip, folding it back, right back onto itself. Beautiful. But these diamond shears, they're not made of diamond, but you can see that diamond shape in the center. Now, standard scissors, when you go to cut glass, it's just going to smash it flat. And if you use the diamond shears, it kind of rounds it from four corners and leaves the bit round. So depending on what kind of shape you want, the scissors make a big difference. And they're made of metal, so they're cooling the glass, and cooling the glass makes it stiff. So really thinking ahead on whether you want it flat, whether you want it pointy, whether you want it round. It all leads to the final shape that you're looking for. And here we go, our final handle. Grab the tip. You can even see the very tip of it is a little darker. It's cold enough for him to hold and then reattach. That was beautiful teamwork. Very nice. And I think that's all the decoration we're going to do. So that means the piece is finished. But it still isn't, and that way that would stress the glass out and cause it to break. So we're going to tuck this away into what we call an annealing oven. This is a controlled environment set at around 960 degrees. Nothing's going to melt, nothing's going to break, as long as they go into there at the right temperature. And then at the end of the day, we'll let everything we make come down really slowly to room temperature. The amount of time it takes to cool the glass is all based on the thickest item in the oven. So this is a beautifully thin piece. It'll just be an overnight or 12-hour cycle. But if it was solid around that same size range, you can give it about 4 or 5 days to cool down properly. And as you're wandering through the 35 centuries, going through the innovations area, you might see a giant telescope mirror blank that looks like a giant honeycomb right in the middle of the museum. That took about 11 months to cool because of its massive size and thickness. And that was before they had programmable controllers controlling it by automatic. So it was somebody's job for 11 months to come in and just go, tweak, Just keep turning that temperature down just a little bit every day until we got down to room temperature. But torches are really great additions to our repertoire. They allow him to give a little insurance heat on the bottom, focusing heat where he needs it. And that subtle purple color will be even brighter. This little ornament that's sitting here is pretty much the finished color that we're looking at on that beautiful piece. A little water on that weak connection and a light tap. That's all it takes, folks. Very nicely done. We're going to torch that bottom scar mark. Just softens up anything that might be sharp. And we get our final look at a beautiful bottom.